Hello, everybody. I guess let me know in the chat if you can hear me. If the
Hello,
sound
everybody.
seems weird at all,
I guess let me
sometimes
know
seem
in
to
the
have
chat
sound
if you can
problems,
hear me.
and I will
Hello,
try to
everybody.
address those.
I guess let me know in the chat if you can
My
hear me.
apologies to all
Hello,
of
everybody.
you who were
I guess let
enjoying
me know in the
the
chat if you can
Kickstarter
My
fulfillment
apologies to
box
all
packing
of
show.
you who were
I guess let
enjoying
me hear
the
an echo.
My apologies to all of you who were enjoying the My apologies to all of you who were enjoying the My apologies to all of you who were I guess let me know in the chat. My apologies to all of you who were I guess let me know in the chat. My apologies to all.
Okay, is it better now? I guess I need to keep talking or you're not going to be able to tell. Sorry. Okay, I had wondered if that was doing something weird. Um, some of you probably don't normally watch this show, so I think I'll introduce myself and say who I am. I'm Rhonda Bender. I'm one of the people who paints the studio and web store models for Reaper. And I'm in Tennessee, and I'm not a Reaper employee, so I'm not going to be able to answer any questions about Kickstarter. In fact, I wasn't able to hear Justin's announcement just before my show because I had everything set up. So you guys probably know more than I do. So if you can help people who come in the chat and they're looking for information on Kickstarter stuff, I would really appreciate that. And in fact, my brain is still kind of in ReaperCon fever. So I didn't even think about the fact that I would be coming on and everyone would be all jazzed up about Kickstarter fulfillment. So I thought about that about 15, 20 minutes before the show. So I'm going to try to shoehorn some Kickstarter content in. The other way you may know me is I'm the author of the current series of Reapers Learn to Paint kits, and there is one of those in the Kickstarter, and I'm going to show the miniatures that I painted for that. So, in fact, I think I'll switch to that view, and I can show the paints as well. So, I'm going to kind of start with some of that and then sort of do the original thing I planned, which was swatching some of the ReaperCon paint colors for those who are interested in being able to see the colors before they commit to which boxes they want to buy. So I'm just going to read the update. KSBS Now Owl said, Justin just did a voiceover on the warehouse stream. Reaper has received the July retail release packages of Dragonfolk and Rune Whites. They have not received the Kickstarter package Dragonfolk and Rune Whites. They are on the missing container. And there was a scroll of some other figures that are missing. And I'm sure that that will come back after I finish. So hopefully that's not too boring, but if you're not interested in me talking about paints and the Kickstarter paint kit and ReaperCon stuff, then I guess come back in a little less than 2 hours and it'll be back to the regular fulfillment stuff. Inara asks if I can talk a bit about how to prep the new Bones Black figures before painting. I didn't do any different prep. I'm going to switch to the view where you can see some of those figures, which involves a extra light. So oops, there we go. So these are the figures that I painted for the Bones Kickstarter Learn to Paint kit, and they are Bones Black, and I didn't do anything different than I would normally do. Actually, let me switch to this one. So I didn't do anything differently than I would normally do, which is I now dip the figures in isopropyl alcohol. I use 91% isopropyl alcohol. So previously I would scrub them with soap, like dish soap and a toothbrush, and that works too, but the alcohol just works a little better. And I do the same thing with my metal miniatures now as well because it helps. The alcohol is really effective at taking off grease, and then getting swished around in liquid is usually enough to remove debris. Because people will have touched your figures even before you got them. So there's a chance that there's hi Cyberstorm, Grey Wolf, lots of people. There's probably too many people to say hi to everyone today, but thank you all for putting up with me instead of the stuff you want to know. So there's going to be potentially grease and debris on your figures because of the manufacturing process and because people grab them out of the molds and people grab them out of the box to put them in the blisters. And then when you took them out of the blisters, maybe you had lunch before you did that. And so right before I paint something, I like to wash it. I don't prime my Bones figures. I don't prime my classic Bones, my Bones Black. I actually haven't. Well, no, I painted Bones USA from the test streams and stuff we did, so I don't prime any of my figures, and that's kind of a debate that I'm not going to get into spray priming figures. If you really want to prime Bones figures, I recommend brush priming or using an airbrush. Hi, Crones and Bones. So my stream is called Beyond the Kit because I'm the author of the Reaper Learn to Paint kits, and I like to try to do kind of experiments and things to test stuff and help people feel more comfortable pushing their skills and working in different ways with their supplies. So it's a little bit different every week. These figures are not only in the Learn to Paint kit. I think a lot of them are in the core set. But honestly, I'm not one of these people that's great at keeping up with every little thing from the Kickstarter. So if one of you in the chat knows whether all of these figures are in the core set or if some of them are add-ons, but they are all in Bones 5, and they were also accessible in other ways than getting the Learn to Paint kit, and all of the paints that are in the Learn to Paint kit are paints that are already released as part of the Bones line. I would actually rather you dip them in bare latex primer from Home Depot than use spray primer on them, because spray primer is so inconsistent in results for people. Maybe I'll do a priming test show one day. So kind of how this all started is I wrote if you go on the Reaper forums, and sometimes they send you, they did a print thing with, Bones fact tips, the last Kickstarter, and that went in everybody's box. When Bones originally released, I grabbed a bunch of them and I did tests. I tried different primers. I tried painting directly when you thinned it or when you used medium, or lots of other things. I did a lot of experiments with Bones, and all of that's on the Reaper forums, which you can get to from reapermini.com. Oh, hi, Mark Sperberry. That's nice to see you. That's kind of how I got started experimenting and doing stuff like that, although I experiment in my painting as well. So one of the things I did last week was, let's zoom in a little bit. This was a figure that I had quick painted for our game years ago, and I wanted to show people that you can touch up figures even if you don't remember what colors you used. So I used colors from the, nope, that's the wrong one. I used colors from the Kickstarter, and I think some Reapercon colors, but I ended up using these a lot. These are colors that are coming in the Kickstarter, the Oxide Yellow, Oxide Red, and Oxide Brown, because you can see he's got a lot of like yellows and browns on him. I'll put the paper back, actually. Maybe that will help him stay in focus. So if you're interested in seeing the before and after, I've posted pictures of that and kind of a summary of what I did on my blog for people who prefer to read or just want to kind of catch up. And then, of course, you can catch the video again on Reaper's YouTube channel. I think it stays on the Twitch channel a while, too. But since the camera's having problems, I'm going to get my little gray card and then show you close-ups of these figures. So the Learn to Paint kit from the Kickstarter is kind of a modified version of the Core Skills kit. So it covers kind of the same skills. There's a little bit extra, but with different paints and different figures. I'll zoom in again. This is the kind of, here's how you do it detail figure. So in the original Core Skills kit, that's the skeleton. And a couple of my streams have been about testing different wash colors and stuff on the skeleton. But for this one, for this kit, I used this little guy, which was a lot of fun. I think he's a great figure for that. So what I want with the kind of the highlight figure where I go through all the steps is that it be something that's a fairly simple sculpt with not a lot of complex details, so that someone who really is new to painting can just get in there, paint it, and get finished in a pretty quick amount of time and feel a sense of accomplishment in what they've done. And it shows you how to paint the vase as well. So he's fun. And I think if you get this as the add-on, there's like 4 or 5 different sculpts, like poses and stuff of this guy. He's called a boulderkin. But there's just this one guy in the kit. I'm also probably not going to remember the names of anyone. I think I did know it. Like I knew this guy's name when I painted him, and now I don't remember. I should have got the box graphic before I started. So this is like a knight type figure, warrior, adventurer, townsfolk. And I'm trying to keep the color schemes, not too complicated, so that if you are fairly new, it's not going to be like a ton of mixing and stuff. But I also wanted to, so there's 12 paints, and I wanted to show you the range of different colors that you can mix with the kit. So this one's fairly straightforward. This was one of the first ones I did when I was working on the kit. And it's a modified red, blue, yellow color scheme. Some of the people who were here last week, we were talking about color schemes a little bit. So since it's a yellowish leather, that's the yellow part of the red, blue, yellow color scheme. Let's see. This was actually the last one that I painted. She's like a bog witch. Tiana Lise, I think is her name, something like that. I believe sculpted by either Julie or Bob. I don't remember for sure. This was, I'm pretty sure, Bobby Jackson. I'm not going to remember this for sure either, but I sometimes can tell by people's style. And I believe the Boulder kin are also Bobby Jackson, but I'm not 100% sure. Some of you guys are going to know. These are the figures from the Learn to Paint kit in the Kickstarter Sidway. Yep. I didn't have time to pull the paints off. So this one's a Bog Witch. And then the gem is just a wash, so that's not complicated. And I tried to make her eyes a little glowy too. But I like purple green and then reddish brown as a color scheme a lot. So, and the way Bob does his cloth folds, it works really well for dry brushing usually. Thank you for confirming that, green users. So let's see who's next. This is Siobhan the Vampire, I want to say. And there's artwork for her. I think this was from a ReaperCon a few years ago. So I tried to match the artwork as much as I could. This is one of the more complicated figures. I wouldn't start with this one. Well, it's complicated in the sense that some of as much as possible, for speed or simplicity, you want to paint all the same colors at the same time. So like if you're painting this guy, I try to have you do the blue steps all at the same time. With this figure, that was challenging just because the way the clothing was positioned and stuff. So it's not complicated in the sense of mixing the colors or anything like that. It's just you're going to make this black and then later you're going to have to make it again kind of thing. But I thought it would be fun to, as much as possible, paint her. She's kind of got like purplish hair and stuff. Paint her to match the... I'm not covering black in intense detail. There's just a little bit of black on her. But you can see her boots. And I usually keep the two, like, no more than 3 steps of dry brushing for these. So some of the contrast on these isn't what I would normally talk to you about doing in the show, or, you know, if you came to ReaperCon and you're getting feedback on your miniature. So this is one of the cat folk, and this one is Julie, I'm pretty sure, because Julie does our cool anthropomorphic player character type people. Are they called cat folk? I don't know. And this, I like green, orange, and purple, and is another triad color scheme that I like, and it's kind of a purpley brown. Is why I say it's a green, orange, purple scheme. And I like cats. I have an orange cat. I believe this is a female cat folk person, although I don't think it's overly determined by the sculpt. My orange cat is a male, and most orange cats are actually. I think only 1 in 10 are female, if I'm remembering correctly. Cat fur colors are linked to certain genes or something like that. All right, who we got next? This is a character whose name I am now forgetting. He's like a Savannah Ranger, I think is his subtitle, but I can't remember his actual name. So someone was asking if I can show my ring. So Shotakami, this is, it's known as a Latvian engagement ring or a Latvian 7-day ring, and you could probably find a lot of different versions on Google, but I got this when I lived in Toronto from a local jeweler, and I've never seen one that I liked how they did the little plaques as well as this one. And there's some more nice cloak folds too. So these work surprisingly well for dry brushing, this kind of cloak fold. I like this figure a lot. He's a great figure, and I wanted to make sure that I had different skin tones and stuff like that so that you could go forward and paint many different types of characters. So this one is called Huntress, but I believe the sculpt is an adaptation of one of the many versions of Tara the Silent, who's a thief type character. But this one is less thiefly, but she's got all these cool little decorations, and then they're on the cloak too. Which when I first painted it, I actually missed some of these. I was taking pictures, and I'll start posting them on Instagram again. But I was taking pictures with the palette that had the colors on it, and I would post the figure in front of it, and then put the pictures on Instagram. And then after I posted the picture, I'm like, oh darn, I didn't paint some of those little fleur-de-lis, so I had to go back and do that. But it does remind you about that, I think, in the kit. So that one was interesting because there were a couple of colors that I noticed missing. There's not like a orange brown, and that was a little challenging to mix, but I was impressed at the number of colors that I could mix from the kit. So this one actually is an official version of Terror of the Silent, I believe, originally sculpted by Werner Clock. So there's the clock and booty for those who are fans, and I'm pretty sure that Bobby Jackson did this one. She has really nice hair too, like a nice flow of hair. So I was painting this as more of a sneaky, foresty type of person than a street thief type character. So let's see who's next. This is somebody or other, the Orc Shaman. Gontar. Gontar the Orc Shaman. Oh, I actually remembered one. I'm very impressed. And he's a pretty good one to do if you haven't been painting much, or you really are starting with the kit, or you have a friend that started with the kit. After the Boulderkin, he's a pretty good one to do. You can reach most of the areas pretty well. There's a lot of nice textures to bring up. And if you're a new person, you could, where I did these little gold details on the clothes, you could just skip that and just paint it the same color as the leather. This is, I think he's just called Young Mage. He may have a name now, but I think he was available as a metal figure, and he was just Young Mage. And this is, again, Bobby Jackson, and I believe it's one of his actual characters that he plays. And he had a lot of feelings about this one, so I asked him before I painted him how he wanted me to paint him, and he just said, paint him so he looks good. And I'm like, lawful good isn't a color scheme, Bobby Jackson, but this was my attempt. And it also gave me an opportunity to throw yellow and a bit of a lighter color into the kit for people to experiment with that a little, because I think if you have been painting for a minute, you know that painting yellow is not always the most fun. This is, I think she's just called Noblewoman. And Jen Greenwald did the version that's on the, like if you look on the web store and you see the fancy painted version. And I was going to try and follow her color scheme, and it just seemed a little challenging with the paints that I had. And I wanted to kind of throw in one that was a little more pastels for the people who want, you know, we don't always want rough and tumble adventurer down in the dungeon out in the forest colors. So this miniature was a good opportunity to explore some alternatives to those. And I did have a lot of fun with the colors on this one. These are the colors I like to paint a lot of the times if I get the chance. And she's got this great feather detail on her hat, and because it's Bones Black, it's pretty, you know, the detail's very crisp, the little dots on the gold trim. She's got a brooch. And then the last one is, oh golly, I should remember her name. I think she's a version of Sarah the Seeress. There are certain characters in the Reaper catalog who get updated sculpts and stay with us as characters, and I'm pretty sure this is, I might be wrong though. I painted, because this is embarrassing, she was an anniversary figure a couple years back, and I painted the store copy, and I tried to follow the same color scheme, so the paint techniques are very different than what I did on the store copy, but I tried to use some similar colors, so if you like those colors, this is a more accessible version of painting those. So those are the 12 figures from the Learn to Paint kit that's in the Kickstarter. And I'll zoom out and show you, at least I think I'm zooming out. And why am I not zooming out? Okay, there we go. And show you some of the paint colors. Maybe I'll zoom in just a little. So this is, you could buy 2 sets of colors on the Kickstarter. And I swatched these out. Hi, Cyberstorm. I try to show a range of miniatures. So a couple weeks ago, I worked on updating this figure as if he were entered in the MSP Open at ReaperCon. and you got feedback from the judges, what would you do? Because the MSP Open is actually open to a wide variety of styles of painting and types of figures and different manufacturers. You don't have to be like a top shelf, insane European level painter to enter the MSP Open. We would love to see your work, regardless of where you are in your painting voyage, and then for you to continue entering. So these paints are all already... Tristan the Lore Mistress, thank you. Yes, the green lady with the dragon is Tristan the Lore Mistress. And I love that she has a little dragon friend. So these colors are all currently available in the line. It's just that they are on a discount if you got them through the Kickstarter. And these are some colors that Ann Forrester, who mixed the majority of the paints in the line, she's no longer the paint mixer at Reaper, but she was for many, many years. And these were colors she felt were kind of overlooked, like super useful colors that people didn't think about a lot, or maybe aren't the best sellers or whatever. And it's all the Kickstarters usually have some colors that are already in the line, but then they also introduce new colors. And these are the new colors. And I guess my paper was too big. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. So some of these have been available as promotional colors in the past. So Carnival Purple was a ReaperCon color one year. Bruce Purple and Ashen Brown were in the line long ago and then got canceled, and now they're back. So all of these colors, if you bought them in the Kickstarter, you'll get these, but they will eventually come into retail. And then these are some of the new ones. This side, I think, is the new one. So I think Wild Violet is new too. And I was very excited to see these. So if you've used artist paints at all and you like yellow ochre and burnt sienna, and I think this one's similar to burnt umber, these colors work very similarly to those. So they're useful mix of colors if you add them to like the Reaper Clears or whichever most saturated versions of the colors you like. I don't know if one of the moderators can help out. Henry JF was asking if someone can link to the Kickstarter page. So I think only moderators can post links in the chat. So hopefully one of them will be able to do that. It's hard for me to do much on the computer. If you just go to Kickstarter and type Bones 5 into the search box, it comes up. They're clears in the sense of they're pure versions of color. They're not super transparent because that's the nature of pigments. So earth's colors are often much less transparent than really vibrant colors like purple or this blue. These are more likely to be, and this is across all paints. Like I use artist paint, I have oil paint, I have acrylic paint, I have watercolors. This is across paints that these things tend to happen. They're related to the pigments themselves, and then everybody mixes the paints a little bit differently. And then these are also new colors, Orchid Purple, Lotus Orange, and Leaf Bud Green. I didn't get to use those a lot on the Blacksmith. These colors came in very handy repainting the Blacksmith. But I did use these colors on this guy that I'm still working on a little. So he's a mix of ReaperCon colors and Kickstarter colors. So the orange color is like Lotus Orange and Orchid Purple, and then I think I used a bit of Kraken ink or something else to go a little bit darker. And then the blues are Kickstarter colors. So they're Storm Chaser blue and something else. I mean, not Kickstarter colors, they're ReaperCon colors, some of which may be last year's ReaperCon colors too, because I just decided it was okay to use some of those too. But I like to try to do this if I have new paint colors that I haven't. Yeah, these guys have fun little bums. So I've also painted this guy. I wanted to get used to the Pathfinder colors. So last year I painted this guy with mostly Pathfinder colors because they have some amazing pinks and purples, and then he's got a little pink bum. And then this is also an example of a red-green color scheme because magenta counts as red in color theory purposes. So that was kind of experimenting with just a very simple color scheme and then with purple to accent it. And then this guy is an example of an orange-blue color scheme. And then it's hard to see. So they have this thing on their arms and legs where they've got these other kinds of scales. and it's harder to see on him, but that's the purple orchid, or orchid purple. And then I think Kraken ink mixed in for shadowing, and something else, probably Torchlight mixed in for highlights. Somewhere I do have the paints written down, so I will probably, whenever I get this guy finished, I will post that on my blog and include if I know what paint colors I used on stuff, I include it, because I know people are often very interested in that. So those are the Kickstarter colors. But again, if you weren't in the Kickstarter, don't stress, because all of these colors will come to Reaper, or to retail. I will leave the paint kit guys over here in case new people have come at the end and want to see those. So, somebody said something about Ashen Brown is an interesting color. So one of the things I love about this color, and I'm so happy to see it back, is this is kind of, and I get this from Jennifer Haley. I didn't figure this out on my own. This is a secret weapon for shading really fair colored skin. So like that, but there's even some of the lighter colors for skin you mix in to get shadows, and for some reason it just works. The other one that I would recommend, so this would be like the cool version, and then the warm version would be Saddle Brown, which is in the Bones paint line. And those are both kind of, if you have trouble doing shadows on pale skin, those are the colors I would look at. Because they're not too red, they're not too orange. Like, I think the problem is that fair color skins are so low in saturation that most color, if you use something like this might work well as a shade color for a medium value skin tone or a slightly darker Caucasian skin tone. But it would look weird if you started doing it on a very pale color. The other thing that Ashen Brown is good for is if you have kind of those purpley, where did my purple browns, like browns with a little bit of purple in them, that is a great color to highlight them with. So if you have Volcano Brown, that color works really well to highlight it. I think she has that kind of brown. So it works well to highlight that kind of brown. Okay, so I'm going to switch off Kickstarter stuff for a minute and go back to ReaperCon stuff. Although let me just... So I don't know if this is going to work. So these are the colors that I used for sure on that guy. I'm not sure I used a lot of the black indigo in the end. I think I used more Kraken ink. But so it was Dark Reach Shadows and Hobgoblin Blue, which are new Kickstarter colors this year. And then the Kraken ink is also new Kickstarter. No, that's from last year's Kickstarter. Or not Kickstarter. I'm saying Kickstarter. I mean ReaperCon. So these are ReaperCon colors from this year. This was a ReaperCon color last year. And then the rest that's a ReaperCon color from this year. And then the rest are Kickstarter colors, I think. But again, when I get it finished, I will put that on my blog, which I'm sure somebody has posted a link to. No, I don't have any place to put this. Because I probably will reference this once again. So what I was going to do now is, when I originally did these swatches, I was missing a couple of colors, and I have now received those colors. So first I have Rogue Shadow. And I mix these paints more than you saw just now, because right before the stream starts, I go through and mix all the paints I know I'm going to use. So that you don't have to listen to me doing that on stream. So what I do with the swatching, maybe I'll zoom in just a little for this one, is I want to try to show you two things. So this is the color straight out of the bottle, which in this case you're not, oops, hold on, I dropped my paintbrush, but I have another one. In this case, you're not seeing a lot of information because it's so dark, like that just looks super dark. And that's why I do the next part. So I'm gonna do some of the straight out of the bottle, which in art painter terms is called the mask tone. And then I'm going to add a little water and thin it out. And that allows you to see some of what they call the undertone. And so you can see in some of these how it makes a difference. Like even this metallic one, there are pinky tones under there that you might not see without thinning it out. And then if you look at these two greens, if you look at the thick color the mass tone, they look pretty similar. But as you start to thin them out, you can see this one has a bit of blue in it. It's almost, it's not a teal, but it's a bit of a blue-green. And then this one is more of a yellowy proper green, or like a halfway mix between red and blue, a standard green. So that's why I like to do both. Show you the color straight out of the bottle and then thin it out a little so you can see more about it. And then after I finish making these swatches, I'm going to talk about what you might do, why you might want to do swatches yourself and how you could do that. Because this is just a small amount of information and maybe not the way that would be most useful to you in terms of painting. So now I have this box, and this time I do have this. So the last one I didn't have the retail packaging, but this one I have the retail packaging. So this is the Gloom and Grave palette, and then it shows you let's make it easier on the camera, shows you the colors on the back, and then you can kind of see through the window as well. And then they're in a plastic tray for additional protection. But I did open this so I could mix all the paints. Okay, now I've dropped the paint as well as the brush. I will return momentarily. And I'm going to get that brush back because it's a little bigger and I like it for doing swatches. Okay, so this is Necromancer Purple. I'm excited to see what this one looks like. I love purples and pinks and stuff. I did not check them for doing this. So if you feel bad that your paints do this, don't feel bad because it happens to everyone sometimes. And this looks like one of those colors where we're definitely going to see something a little bit different. As I start to thin it out, we're going to see how vivid it really is. So it's kind of a dark reddish purple straight out of the bottle. Add just a little more of that straight out of the bottle. Strength. But if you thin it down to use for glazes and washes, you're going to get a little bit of a different effect. And that's why I like to be able to look at both things. So let's see, I've got a couple of questions here in the chat. Coffee Nerdery Beer asks, do I recommend a certain weight of paper for the swatches? I tend to recommend heavier paper than not. I'm going to go through some different options. This is 140-pound watercolor paper. Even 80-pound sketch paper is going to be better than just like 20-pound out of the printer paper. But I brought a whole bunch and I'm going to do like a sample swatch on them. Crows and Bones said, I thought of using my RV notebook for swatches. Anyone know if those notebooks would be good for that? The paper is different than I'm used to. The pencil has a hard time showing up. I may be able to go grab one and add that to the test as well. That paper is a little thinner than what I would typically recommend. And the thinness isn't a huge problem, but it will make the paper warp. Let me see, I have some examples. So I'm going to go through examples to when I kind of talk about if you wanted to do this yourself, what are some things you could do. But if you look at the paper sideways, you can see where it's warped. This is index card, so this isn't super thin paper. But paper that isn't designed to have water on it, and especially if it's thinner, is more likely to do that warping thing. But if that doesn't bother you, then it doesn't matter. So cardstock might work. You might get a little bit of that, but again, it's like whether that matters to you. In terms of can you do it functionally, it would be what's going to be durable. So I would want my swatches to be on slightly better paper, partly to be durable. But then also you don't want the paper to pill and you don't want the water to like rip through the paper, which I don't know for sure that I got some paper out of my printer because we have really cheap printer paper to test. So we'll see if it does. I don't think it'll pill. I've done kind of just single stroke testing on printer paper, but I'm concerned that if I did this part where I'm thinning it down, I'm concerned that printer paper, it might wear through it. So I got a little too much water on there, but because it's watercolor paper, I can just kind of wash it off and it's going to be okay. Now, it's hard to tell, I think, because it's wet, but this is a metallic. So when it dries and we look at it dried, we're going to see some cool. And that is a really cool color. It's like steel, but just a little blue. It's very cold. Wraith steel is a great name for it, I think. I like that. Toilet paper is right out. Yes, 100%. It does not meet the durability or thickness qualifications. This is Death Knight Black. I want to make sure I got all the metallic out of there, actually. Ooh, that's a nice color. That's going to be a nice color to mix shades with. It's got a little bit of blue, but it's not like crazy blue. I like that a lot. And that was Death Knight Black. I like the off blacks a lot, and I like the off whites, which this is one of. This is Vampire Pallor. Michael had this one on his stream, and he was very excited about it, so I've been waiting to see. Oh, that's nice. I find it easier to mix with if you've got something like linen white or something like this, or I think ghost white is the one that's a little bit blue. Those tend to be a little easier for me to mix with and not get like a chalky result, or not have the white dominate the mix, because it's really easy for a strong white to dominate, you know, a color like this basilisk green. Well, okay, to be fair, I probably wouldn't mix green with a white depending on the effect I was going for. You generally want to mix a green with something that's got a little yellow in it. It'll really dull out if you use just white. And this one's an odd bone. Although I would say that from the bottle, at least, it looks like it's also going to be really useful for things like old parchment paper, teeth, horns, stuff like that. And there's always so many of all of those things on miniatures. Yes, Valander, that is kind of the apology for canceling Maggot White, which was my previous one. Let's see, we had a question here from Trashorama. So in my usual paint style, do I use a lot of colored metallics? I'm having a hard time finding adequate use cases for a lot of the colored metallics. I typically have not. Most of my painting is done for Reaper or Dark Sword to put stuff up on the web, and typically non-metallic metal photographs better. So not necessarily because I dislike metallics, but just because of what the function of a lot of what I'm painting is for, I don't typically paint a lot of metallics. Before I was working with Reaper, I would use these things more for like silk and satin. So painted in a similar way, if you're familiar with Michael Proctor shaded metallics, I would use matte colors for the shading, and then, you know, so start with like a base coat of that, use matte colors in the shades, and then mix a lighter metallic in for the highlights to make like silk and satin dresses and stuff like that. So that's the new set. It's going to take a minute to dry, and while it does, I will talk a little more about swatching and how you might do it. And yep, Maggot White's not a great name. How you might do swatching and why you might do swatching. So let me just make... Oh, but before I do that, I want to say I was rewatching something to write the blog article for the latest washes experiment, and I realized that I missed a bunch of people subbing and resubbing again. I'm just very terrible for this. So Durham, Texas, Rax333, The Mighty Jabberwock, Quindy LaRue, and Reaper John, thank you for subbing or resubbing during my past one or two shows. Lord Dave says, Trashorama, I've used the colored metallics to show reflected colors from a cloak onto a true metallic armor, for example, or grass reflecting on metal leg guards. And that's an interesting idea, because if you use inks or clears or whatever for those kinds of things, you're going to lose some of the shine. So you get the color, but you lose some of the shine. So that's an interesting idea. All right, so more about swatches. The goal of doing swatches, if you choose to do it, is to give yourself information. And so it's good to think about what kinds of information would be useful for you to have. Thank you, Maritassa. Hi, Lady Nim. I'm just swatching out some of the colors from ReaperCon, and right now I'm going to be talking about why you might want to do some swatching of your colors and how you might approach that. And then probably at the end, since I know everyone's got Kickstarter fever, I'll go back through the figures from the Kickstarter Learn to Paint kit. Where was I? Right. So the goal of swatches is information. So I'm doing these on stream, and the information I want you to have is what these colors look like. And then once it's dry and after the stream and everything, I'm going to scan this and I'll put it up on, I'll send it to Reaper. They'll probably post it places, but I'll put it up on my Instagram. I'll probably put it up on my blog again. And my scanner is pretty true to color. So, the video is good, but in case you're worried that the video color is a little off, you might find the scans to be a little more, give you a little more information. The one thing you miss on the scans is the metallics are really in the hand to see the shimmer for those. So information that you might want to have from your swatches. Color is one, and then I talked about how the color straight out of the bottle, or if you painted, multiple coats of base coat, is different than the color if you add water, which is what you're going to see if you use that paint to make washes or glazes. So I find those, those two things are very important pieces of information. What is just the color? Black Pearl is purplish. And the burnished platinum is just a little bit mauve, so it would work as a highlight. And then the other piece of information that is useful for a lot of us is opacity. Now, these swatches don't show that very well. I'm not sure I grabbed one of the ones that do, but I will show you just in general how that works. So I will, that's not the one. I will do some swatches on this index card. Well, I'll let the thing dry a minute. So one way to test the opacity is if I had done black lines, and this is just a Sharpie, you do want to use a waterproof pen. So a Sharpie is going to be waterproof. If you use microns, those are waterproof once you let them dry. And then India ink, these are Pitt pens that have India ink in them, but there's another way to get India ink. Those are all waterproof too. If you do stuff on a printer, you're going to want to make sure that it's the ink isn't going to run. Like you do a test paper and then rub your brush over it, a damp brush over it, to see if the ink runs. Even my old laser printer, I think, was fine. The one not laser printer, inkjet, was fine. The one I have now is actually waterproof because I print a lot of pictures and text that I take to painting classes. So when they said that was an option, I'm like, oh, well, that is actually the main thing I print for, so that'll be super useful. So I meant to grab a color that I didn't care about wasting on swatches, but I didn't. So I'm going to use, this is one of last year's. Well, I should use this year, shouldn't I? I should use a color from this year. I will use Grave Gloom, which was the last color from that set. So if I repeat the swatch, but over this black line, first you can see that out of the bottle, this is actually a fairly opaque paint. You probably wouldn't have to do more than 2 coats to cover. And then, of course, as I add the water, it's going to be less opaque, because that's the point of making washes and glazes. By mixing in water, it's going to be less opaque. So that's a useful way. That's a useful piece of information. Is there another thing that would be useful? So those are the main things that I would think of, but you may have other things that have come up in your painting that you want to know. Sometimes it might be useful to have paper swatches that I could make a note on the back if I had, each of these as a square, or I could just write beside them if it was like a paper that I had. As I use that paint, some paints are harder to blend. Some paints are nice for mixing. As you discover that when you're painting, you can keep notes with your color swatches. So that's another piece of information. So you have to decide if you want to do your swatches in a way that allows you to record information like that. But apart from that, I'm going to show you some different methods and give you some different ideas. But the best one is going to be the one that you will actually do. Because, people are always trying to find what's the best way to store your paints. Whatever way gives you the information you need to find the paint you want. There's no one right way to store your paints. So these are kind of swatch ideas of days past. I couldn't find the one I did have on here. So this is primed index card. I just used gray primer. And then my idea was I was going to swatch the paints on there. And then this was, I did circles and I swatched a bunch of colors. So I was doing like, this was a gray one, this was skin. This was back in the day. I mean, I had these out of color paints and then the original Reaper Pro paints. And then I decided once the MSP paints released, I decided to do like this. And I was again trying to keep it kind of to, keep the colors together. So I didn't add any more on this because this was just kind of the blue section. Then I had browns. Then these were the clears. There were some different clears back in the day that we don't have anymore. These are also colors we don't have anymore. And this is index card, so you can see what I mean about the warping. Where I got it wet, it warped. This sheet, everything got wet, so it warped a little. Whether or not that bothers you is up to you. But you can see that eventually, and not very far into the project, I lost interest and I didn't finish doing this. I've had these literally for like 15 years or something. Oh, so this was my version of doing it on gray, which I lost interest on even more quickly because that's a lot to paint. I don't know why I thought I needed that level of thing. And I left space for the name, but really I should have just had a smaller swatch on the gray so you could see it against the gray. I'm not sure what my thought process was here. But those are some examples of things I've done in the past. More recently, I got excited about this idea. So these are nail polish samples. You can get these off Amazon. The first problem I had is I used like alcohol markers, but just some plastic is slick enough that even Sharpies and stuff will rub off. And then the other problem I had is, I don't know if you can see, so I did a Sharpie line on them for the opacity test. And then I covered the whole section with one coat of paint and then 3/4 with a second coat, half of it with the third coat, and then the last quarter with 4 coats of paint. So the edge of the fingernail has 4 coats of paint and this only has 1. So it gives me an idea of the opacity out of the box and or out of the bottle. And then if you do multiple coats, which is great, that's useful information. It's great to have them separate like this because I could pull 3 or 4 of them out and go, oh, like does this make a nice color scheme? I mean, I would take them off this little binder ring to do that probably, but my original intention was I'd have like a binder ring of blue, a binder ring of green, like that. So I could take stuff out and go, oh, which ones of these work together? It's like, oh, that red doesn't really work. That pink works better. Stuff like that. So having them as separate pieces like this is useful. Having them on the clear plastic meant I could look at them on white, or I could look at them on gray, or I could hold them up to a miniature that I was working on and see if the color fit what I already had in. See that color? I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great. That color, no. So this is a great method, but I didn't keep doing it because the time investment involved to do it is pretty profound. It's not something I can just, slap a couple of pieces of color on a piece of paper after I finish painting. But, this is what they look like before you put paint on them. So I'd already done the stripes on them, and then I bought. Because yes, we can see here where I lost interest because I wrote on a bunch of them. I knew the color names I wanted to put on here, and then I didn't actually do it. So it's not just having a great method, it's having a great method or a good method that you will actually use is better than a great method you won't complete, I guess is my message on that one. So another option would be they sell paper in artist cards, or if you could easily cut these to artist, I think if you cut them in half, it's pretty close to a card size, and then you can get those binders that you can put trading cards in, or CCG cards. That would be a nice way to store things and then still be able to pull them out and do that mix and match color testing idea. I'm going to put the wet paint just a little somewhere else for now. And then they sell these just certain kinds of paper too, but this is a nice way to test different kinds of paper if you're interested. So it has 8 or something different kinds of paper in there. So if you didn't want to have to cut paper, that's the option. It might cost a little more than the fingernail things are their nail polish sample things that the nail salon would use to show you the colors before you decide what colors you want. I was using them as a paint swatch idea. So they're clear, so you can get an idea of the transparency of paint, and they're individual, so you can mix and match to pick color schemes, but it's also a pain in the butt to do it. So I did these, and then I haven't done it since. So for me, it's not the answer. If you like the idea of clear, though, you can get clear plastic card or styrene. Styrene and plastic card are the same things. And yeah, Francis, the color cards on rings is helpful, I think. It'd be those same binder ring things. You could do this with paper too. So I will do my little swatch thing here. So I added the lines as another opacity test. You would cut it out from here, but if you want like cheap clear plastic to do swatches on, because the one thing about paper is that's not what we paint on. We paint on an impervious surface. So if you want to really simulate a surface that's like painting a miniature, something like plastic, which is the other reason I looked at those nail polish things, is going to be, now the thinning won't work as well because this is plastic. If I really wanted to thin, I would have to get out, and see, I just did learn that this particular pen is waterproof on paper, but it is not waterproof on this plastic. So definitely test something like that, whereas the Sharpie is fine on plastic. So you can also get opaque plastic card or styrene in a lot of different thicknesses. So if you'd rather have white plastic instead of white paper, that is an option. So what I ended up actually doing, and I will show people more paper afterwards, but what I ended up actually doing is, the last time we talked about this on stream, it was pointed out that there is paper on the bottle. So at least do this. If you do nothing else, you just get the paint when you get it, and you just put a little drop in there. Doing this, I do have to dispense it onto something else because you can't paint out of the bottle when you're painting the bottle. So then I do my full opacity here. I do a very thick application here. Then I just do a stripe at full opacity here. Then I thin it down, but I thin it with brush-on sealer because labels can be slick. And we had one new label in my set last time. We were switching their labels, and the new one seems like it is more like a magazine paper, more of a glossy paper. But if you use brush-on sealer, that's like the clear part of paint. And then I just use the UPC code and the whatever that thing stands for to paint over. So that's my opacity test. So this is ending up working for me because whatever colors I have out, I can just do this before I clean up at night when I'm finished painting. So in the end, this method has worked better for me. It's not pretty, but it will also work well on the shelf, I think, because I find that if I have paints in a bin or they're up on my shelf, this is not enough information in a indifferently lit room for me to find the right colors. Where once I put these on my shelf and I have them like this, it should be a lot easier for me to say, oh, that brown has a little bit of green in it, that brown has a little bit of red, I want the one with a little bit of red for today. The other thing you could do, and I would probably clean them with alcohol before I did this to make sure it sticks, is you can prime the cap here and then apply, once it's dry, apply paint over it. And I forgot to bring them over, but I'm mentioning that for if you have washes or you have like those, the GW contrast paints, something where the point of the paint is being a wash, falling into crevices, and not seeing the full strength of the paint, but seeing how it reacts over texture. You have built-in texture with this kind of bottle cap. You don't really have built-in texture on the GW bottles, unfortunately, but you could get like just a textured base or some kind of textured surface, prime it white, and then apply your washes over that, and you get the same kind of idea with washes. I think if you go on the Secret Weapons site, they have demonstrated all of their washes that way on a textured base over white primer. So in the end, this is like not a very Pinterest method, but it's the one that's working for me. I'm not very Pinterest friendly. Where did my other swatches go? Let's see, they're not quite dry yet. So I'll go through some paper options. Although before I do that, I just want, you're probably in chat here and I'm just not matching names. But Jessica Laguki, which I'm sure I'm saying your name wrong too, posted on the Reaper Miniatures group that she did swatches after she watched the last one. So she, if you look, she's got the close-ups, it's got the color name, the color number, and then she did the opacity test stripe, and then they're all little individual pieces of paper, so it's easy for her to either put them on a ring or in a notebook and then do that mix and match looking for colors thing. So that, I'm not the only crazy swatch person out there. Someone else did crazy swatches too. Okay, so paper options. Their art papers are like a crazy world of craziness. And you have lots of options of different sizes. So I'll go to the face cam for a minute, kind of so you can see the proportions of things. So you can get little tiny notebooks. So these are by a company called Stillman and Byrne. They make bigger ones too, but they make these little tiny ones. And they're nice if you travel a lot when you paint. If you go to a paint club night or something like that, this would be kind of a more portable option for you to have. And they make paper that's nice and thick and suitable for watery applications. I think that's not even there. This isn't even the thick. This is kind of like the medium thickness one. And then this paper is even thicker. I didn't actually like it for true watercolor very much. That guy's real watercolor. I didn't love it for real watercolor. But for just watery paint applications, it works fine. And then this is, there's like a cover that it has in the store, but so Strathmore does a couple of these, they call it Visual Journal. This is the watercolor one. And they make it in a variety of sizes. So I have it in this size, but it comes in like standard size, and then there's an even bigger size. So this one is the mixed media, which I didn't take the cover off yet. And then this one is the watercolor. For actual watercolors, I recommend the mixed media. It's actually 100% cotton paper. But in terms of what we're doing for these swatch type things, this watercolor one will work fine. It's a good thick paper. And they're both pretty inexpensive. And I have some of those to test as well. Then this is Strathmore drawing paper. This is what I used to use for doing swatches, and I think I have my... So this is, it comes in a variety of sizes as well. So it's a little one, medium one, and we've got some bigger ones than this. So it's 80 pounds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but this paper actually takes water surprisingly well. So these are the swatches I did for the Pathfinder paints a long time ago, and the pages don't buckle very much. The one reason I stopped doing this, I didn't want to use this paper for the stream, is it's slightly an ivory color. It's not a true white. And for scanning and for showing people like you these paints when you're trying to decide if you want to buy them or not, I think it's helpful to see it against a more neutral white color to decide if you want it. But yeah, this is actually miniatures paint right here. So this was me demonstrating. So I do a class on like doing textured cloth, and this is me using, so I'll just paint the flat base and then demonstrate how to do the textured cloth. And it's a little bit buckled because that's like 2 or 3 coats of paint, and then I'm doing these little colors over it. This one didn't even do it as much, and I did it on both sides. So the Strathmore drawing paper is more than adequate if you don't care about it not being 100% white. So I talked about the visual journal paper is good, cheap, and inexpensive option as well. But another option to consider if you're going to go buy paper, do you want toned paper? So toned paper comes in gray or kind of like a tan, and this gives you like a medium value color. So if you've ever had the experience, you prime black and then you put a color on it, it seems super light, but then after you put all your other colors on, oh, now it doesn't seem as light as it did. Or the opposite will happen with white primer. You put a dark color on and or it looks darker than you think it is. That's where looking at colors on this tone type paper is nice because you've got kind of a middle ground thing. That's why I like to prime in gray when I do prime, for that reason, and I'm glad that the Bones figures are more gray now. So that was the gray one. This is Canson is a fine paper company as well. This is their drawing paper. I haven't tested this. I've got one. We can test it now. But I don't have a problem with Canson. I just seem to have ended up with more Strathmore. This is what I've been using to do the swatches on stream. So Canson XL watercolor paper. It comes in pads where you can just rip the sheets off as well. Let's see. This is a black version of drawing paper. So if you are someone who always primes black and you'd rather know, how well do things cover on black, there are black papers. This one is a drawing paper. It's probably going to buckle a little. They do make paper. They're making more black watercolor papers now than they used to. So you may be able to find black watercolor paper or black. Mixed media means that you should be able to do some stuff with paint with water type on it. So this is, I don't know why Strasbourg has so many versions of these cheap papers, but they call it Vision. And this is the mixed media paper. It warps a little. That page had some water on it, and you can see a bit of it. But let's see, this page, I did some watery stuff, and you can see that it's buckled a bit. Pendrake says, I did a thing using thick, wide tongue depressors with index card paper glued to them. I stuck the mini on one end, the stick served as a holder. I did tiny swatches of colors I used on the mini on the paper stuck to the stick. Oh, that's a good idea. And then you can have a record of the colors you used. I do often use that Strathmore drawing paper as kind of my painting journal. And if I mix custom colors, I'll put some down on the paper. So if I need to mix that color again later, I can match it against the original mix. So this is the tanned version of tone paper. And this is mixed media. So they sell the tan and the gray now in mixed media. That's the thicker paper that's designed to be able to take some water. And then the last one I have, which I'm not going to do a sample on because this paper is actually kind of expensive. It's not paper, it's plastic. It's called Duralar. And it's a plastic paper. I don't know how else to explain it. But there's certain kinds of like alcohol inks and watercolors that people do art on this stuff. Maybe that is just one page. No, it's not. But it would be cheaper than buying Plasticard, I think, to get a pad of this. There's another brand that I don't think I'm thinking of right now that does plastic paper. If you have an art store, you can go ask them if they have plastic paper, and they will tell you. But where are we time-wise? So I can test some of these papers if you guys would like that. What else could I do? Duralar was the plastic one. That's the brand name, I think. Archival polyester film for drawing, drafting, and mixed media. And I feel like there's another name for, there's a plastic paper you can buy that the alcohol ink people use, and I'm just blanking on the name right now. Okay, that one's actually my making things gray background on screen. But I got some of the papers out here. So when you look at paper, let's see if I can get one back that fits under here. You'll see a thing where art papers usually list the weight. And a lot of these ones I showed you, you should be able to find in like Michael's or Joann's, as well as actual art stores and Amazon. This gives you a hint. So let me actually find the crappiest paper first. Let's start with the crappy paper. So we'll just start with my printer paper, which I'm pretty sure is 20, maybe 25 pounds. So that's if you had a full sheet of paper, which I don't remember the dimensions of a full sheet of paper. If you have a ream of a full sheet of paper, that's how much it weighs, I think, is what that is. And then it's in grams per square meter or something is the European measure, which I believe is more exact, but I don't remember for sure. But the heavier weight the paper is, the less likely it is to buckle. Whether it reacts well to watery stuff is more about sizing, but I'm guessing the printer paper is going to work. It's just, if you're going to take the trouble of doing the swatches, is this as durable a material as you would want? Now, this is where I'm concerned about the printer paper kind of. If I rub that long enough, it's not going to do well. You can see it coming through a little, where the index card, I've never even seen that on index card, I don't think. And you're also seeing more of the paper texture than you really should see because you're more interested in the paint. But that's the index card versus the printer paper. And I use index cards all the time to still, even though I have all these other papers and stuff, I still end up using index card. They're there and they're happy. They're handy. Oh, that's the holiday colors. I might actually, after this, I might swatch the holiday colors because those are in the store right now. But let's try a 70-pound paper because that's not, this is just drawing paper. I think drawing paper is probably going to work a little better than something called sketch paper. Oops, I did not mean to punish it with that much water, but since it can happen by accident, and you can see it's not actually suffering the same way as the printer paper. So almost anything other than printer paper is going to be better, I think. So that's, and you can see how much it's warping too. That's just a cheap drawing paper. I mean, I think I paid $5 for that pad of drawing paper because that's just my really crappy sketch book when I really don't care at all. I just want to practice. I don't know that I have someplace to put 400 sheets of wet paper, but all right, so let's try all the swatches I've been doing are on the Canson cheap watercolor paper. Let's try the Strathmore cheap watercolor paper. And this is 140 pound, which is, I mean, if you really want to kind of make a top shelf effort on this and you decide to do it with paper, that's probably what I would recommend, is 140 pound. It's nice and sturdy, thick card that'll hold up to, you know, I drop some water on there, which could happen while you're painting. If you've got your swatches out because you're picking your colors, that could happen. So this is pretty good. I don't like it for actual watercolor, but it's good for other types of water media. This is the Tone Gray Sketch. So this isn't the multimedia. This is just sketch paper. I can zoom in a little since I cut the pages down so they would fit. So it's 80 pound. So it's not ideal for this, but my guess is that it's probably going to work. And then I'll get a lighter color bit back, lighter page back. And you can see that the different colors of the paper can affect your perception of the color of the paint. So I also ended up putting more water than I meant to on this one, which is good because in a way that's the test. But it's holding up pretty well. I can't see any damage through there. But let's compare looking at that same color on white versus gray, and your perception of that color is a little different. This color is from the Reapercon Grave and Gloom, and it's Grave Gloom. I guess it's the cover color for that box. And I do have a black page, so I'll go ahead and skip ahead to the black page, and then we can get a different comparison. So this is the Art Again drawing paper, but I'm pretty sure you can get like that mixed media paper now in black as well. I'm going to do it this way just because all the others want, well, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking when I cut up the paper. Do I use a wet palette when painting? I often do. I don't always. I sometimes use the same ceramic palette that Anne Forster uses, if you watched her show, the Reaper Toolbox I think it starts at 11:30. So it'll depend on what kind of what I'm working on. So if I'm doing really smooth blends, I prefer to use the ceramic palette because I can control my dilution and my exact color mixes more precisely. So that's looking at the same color on 3 different. Cyberstorm says he wants to use, or I'm sorry, Cyberstorm, I don't know your gender. I want to use that green as a base skin tone for a cute goblin skin. I think that would work. It's also a good highlight color for goblin green type colors. There's a gobbler green in one of the other Reaper paint sets, and I think this is a good highlight for it. I wish to experiment with that at some point. So you can see the effect that choosing your base color, or why you might want to put it on a clear surface like your blister, so then you can look at it against whatever color you want. So what else did I have? So this is the Strathmore Visual Journal Mixed Media. This is a real 100% cotton paper, and that makes it take wet media very well. So if you do like doing actual watercolors, I would recommend this paper as an inexpensive option over the one that they call watercolor paper. And I did a test last stream, and then these are watercolor pencils that I had activated. So this paper had actually already been wet on the back before I did this. I don't know, Lord Dave, are goblins always green? Because Ron had me paint a whole set of goblins orange, because some goblins are orange. So this is a Strathmore drawing paper. I had shown the back, because you can see some other cool colors. Because I don't know if you guys all have the Pathfinder colors. So I use, these are kind of the notebooks that I use for my day-to-day painting. So this was me testing different skin colors and stuff. Testing some different purples. I have a different one that I actually like write down the colors in. So this is more kind of just the test one. This was me testing a mix range. This is color scheme testing, so it's not fancy, but I'll do this kind of thing. You just put some colors next to each other to see if they work together. It doesn't have to be in the shape of the things on the miniature the way Derek Schubert does it. So these are the Pathfinder colors, which they have some really nice pinks and purples and some other great colors as well. There's some very different greens. And some of these blues are a little different too. So I don't know that I think it works as a set. Like, it doesn't have a lot of dark colors other than black, so it's tough for mixing. But as an adjunct to paints I already have, and I really like the skin colors too. I have enjoyed it quite a lot. And then these are the metallics from the Pathfinder set. There's that's almost a black one, which is kind of interesting. So that's I guess where's my white paper? So Lord Dave says, yeah, well, if Ron wants orange goblins, those goblins are orange, because Ron knows many more goblins than he does. He only knows one. Well, Ron mixes it up, so we've had green goblins and orange goblins. So we can be old school and new school. So even though I already just showed you a bunch of dry swatches on there, I will still show what it looks like to do it wet. And then I'll get a piece of the white paper so you can see what I mean about it being a little more ivory. And I was concerned about, you on stream thinking that this is supposed to be white and that the camera's off or the color's off or something. Once this show finishes up, I think it will return to the Kickstarter streams, unless they're done for the day. I don't know when they're finishing for the day, because I'm sure it is distressingly hot in Texas right now. This is the tan. And this is the mixed media, I think. So instead of the 80 pounds, this is 184 pounds. So this is designed for wet media as well, if you decide to do. And they do it in the gray too. If I have the gray, I don't know where it is. And it's a good thick paper. Very sturdy, and it takes the water well. I thought I did that one already. And that's the one we've been using. So I think that's all of them. Does anyone have any questions about swatching or the Kickstarter colors? I guess we need to look at them dry. That's the question. We need to look at them dry because they look different. So this is the Dungeon Dwellers Adventure box, is like the same kind of box. And it's in the Brinewind box if you wanted to make sure you got these colors. So that has that, I love this color. That's a really pretty green. The Hobgoblin blue is one of the things I was using on this guy for the highlights. Then Rogue Shadow, I believe, is a liner. Griffin Golden Brown is a great color for non-metallic metal gold, as well as, brown tan things. Torchlight is a great yellow, and then Forge Glow is metallic has a little hint of pink in it. Then Graven Gloom is the one I just swatched, other than that green color that I've been using because I'd had that one last week or the week before last. And this, if you decide you want these ones, you would order the hobby box. And I have this that comes in the hobby box, so this is one of the holders. And I forget the name of the company that makes this, unfortunately. I feel terrible. But so they've set it up, so these are just like soda bottle caps. So you can swap out different miniatures you're working on. And then you've got, like, if you have trouble bracing, you've got this extra handle that helps you brace. And it's good in nice weight. And then that's very comfortable on your hand. So I use these spools a lot, but this is a pretty nice system. And I put Santa on there because I figured when I originally planned to just do swatching and not talk about the Kickstarter stuff, I was like, if I have time at the end, I'll paint Santa because I'm sure we're all like overheated and would love to think about it being cooler. So hobby related things are in the hobby box plus these colors. There are miniatures in all of this too, which I don't remember which, but if you go on reaperminiatures.com, if you decide you want any of these, you should pre-order it because the stuff that Reaper doesn't make themselves, they have to order out for, so they have to have some idea of how many to order. Are you asking about Turkey Brown, the holiday color, Cyberstorm? So anyway, if you decide you want any of these, go order it now on reapermini.com so they know how many to make. But if you go there, it will also show you the other contents of the box so that you know what it is. If you give me just a minute, I will test that for you because since I was going to test the holiday colors, I have Turkey Brown as well as Griffin Brown. So then the swag box, there's a swag box called Swag Box, has one of the fast palette boxes like this, and then it also has a triad of paints that come in a blister. So these are the paints in the fast palette, and the burnished platinum is a metallic. The Dark Reach Shadows is the darker blue on this guy. And I used the Goggler Green and the Grave Gloom to work on the green pants on this guy. So the original colors were something else. I was doing touch-ups on this guy, but I wanted to prove that you don't need to remember every color you used on a miniature to do touch-ups on it. So I used paints that did not exist when I painted the miniature to stay true to my word. And then in the little bar, or the blister pack, you get Rusted Armor, Brinewood Brass, and Black Pearl, which are both metallic. And this is just a super cool color. Well, they're all pretty cool. This does what it says. It's like a rusty brown. So those are the ReaperCon colors, which you can order this box of stuff even if you're not coming to ReaperCon. Let me get one of my random test pieces of paper. Well, let's get a white one. Here, I'll just use the index card even. So this is the Griffin, Golden Griffin Brown. And then this is the Turkey Brown, which I have not used for a minute. So the other colors I was going to swatch today are Reaper every year for the past few years has been doing holiday colors. So it's a box of 10 paints. They're kind of holiday themed colors. This is one of them. This is Turkey Brown. But a lot of people don't like to order paint in the winter because it may freeze, and they're in transit and they're concerned about that. So Reaper, after many years of requests, decided to make that same set available in June. And this is also the last time it's going to be available. Ron has said that set won't be what happens at Christmas this year. So it's kind of your last chance to get. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those colors come back in some capacity at some point. But if you want to be sure you get any of those, you want them now. So I thought I would swatch them out for people who hadn't seen them. And based on the time we have left, I think I will just go ahead and do that. But if you have any questions about the stuff I said previously, feel free to ask. And I'll have a quick go with the holiday colors, which I did shake, I believe. But there's my paper. Yeah, coal black is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, people complain enough, eventually we get coal black back, or they do it as a promo color now and then. But if you want this set of stuff, you should get this set of stuff. Now mine are actually, these may be several years old, so I shook them, but I didn't check them all. Some of these may not, like some of these colors came out before they did the set, so some of these might be several years old. So if the paint is gunky or there's a problem with it, that problem is on me. This is not a new set. So don't assume that there's going to be a similar problem with your paint, because there wouldn't be, very likely. So this is Christmas Wreath, which I think I did use on Santa, on the tree. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I used it on there. I was looking for other figures that I might do the, repaint on, and I noticed that guy in my cabinet, and then I thought about how very long it's been since I painted on him and how unfinished he is. So I may still drag him out if we're all still having heat spells the next time I do a stream. Which also, let me mention that I will not be doing this stream next Monday, and I don't think there will be any Reaper shows on Monday, because that's when July 4th is being observed for Reaper. When I do come back, so it'll be, I don't remember. So the week after that, if someone would like to tell me what the week after that is, I'm going to talk about transporting and shipping miniatures. So I'm going to show different kinds of cases, give you some tips for shipping. I'll probably have something to paint as a backup, or if that doesn't fill all the time, I'll have something to paint. I was originally going to do that show closer to ReaperCon, but then it occurred to me, if you decide you want to buy a dedicated miniatures carrying case, you need some time to order that before ReaperCon or other cons that are starting back up. So I thought I should do that show sooner than later. Next Monday is the 12th. Thank you, Cyberstorm. So Monday the 12th, I will be talking about transporting and shipping miniatures. I've also done some shipping, because I have clients that, I don't see in person, so I have to ship their miniatures to them. And I've never had any problems in shipping, I don't think. I try to be I double pack. So this is Ginger Cookie, which last week people were saying they used for shading skin and painting suede. I like it for like parchment and bones and horns, kind of the darker color for those things. Golden Glow. So also I would invite any of you, if you have questions about shipping or transporting miniatures, whether it be like armies for games or a few pieces to put in a contest. If you have questions about that, let me know before then. But also if you have tips to share. So I don't have a lot of personal experience with armies. Most of mine's been transporting miniatures to contests or shipping, 1 or 2 figures to clients. So sort of the mass option, I will be trying to do some research and have some things to tell you about. But I certainly would love to see people sharing their experiences in the chat or contact me in advance with some information. Because it's great when we all pool our knowledge. So this is Golden Glow. Many years ago, Anne Forster, the person I mentioned who designed the MSP paint line and mixed and formulated most of the colors until a year or so ago when Sadie took over doing that. This was a color years ago that she felt she was working on a project and it was missing from the line. So I think it came out, like, we used to do this thing called Artist Con. It was like just a little mini one-day con. I think it came out first for one of those, but then they added it to the Christmas colors or holiday colors. It's not just Christmas. It is many winter holidays. So let's all sit around, think snowy thoughts. I'm sure that some of you are suffering with some very ridiculous temperatures right now. The last time I looked at the map, it wasn't good. And then our poor Reaper crew is suffering because the weather's there is just crazy. I don't know how any of them live there, honestly. So this is Hollyberry, which is really quite a nice vivid red. And I know that Valander loves this one. He's mentioned that it's, I think he said it's a little more opaque than a lot of the more vivid reds. And it is hard to make a vivid red paint that's opaque. The pigments just don't want to do that. So peppermint white is probably going to end up being hard to see on stream. I don't think it's a metallic. I guess we'll find out for sure. But this is one that maybe I should get one of my other colors of paper for. Because, yeah, that's very vivid on stream there. All right, let's get the gray paper. And also paint it on there so we can see it a little more. So I will let that dry over here and try to remember to bring it back once these have dried. This is Sparkling Snow, and this one is the metallic. It's just got like a little hint of blue. And it still doesn't want to come up. Every now and then you get one that's super stubborn. But never squeeze. Squeezing is never the correct answer. Okay, so this problem is one of the ones I mentioned where these paints are a bit older than the ones that you will receive. And this is a thing that I've noticed paints do. So they kind of, it'll gunk up here, but the paint down at the bottom is probably fine. Yeah, the paint at the bottom is fine. And I have been remiss in doing my paint maintenance, which is funny because if you go to my site, the main page will have a link to information on how to maintain your paints. And I normally try to do this every couple of years at the latest. And I'm just late in doing it on my everyday paints. And that's what's happened here, is I haven't gone through and checked to see if any of my paints need water added, and that paint clearly did. So that is not past the point of repair, and there's some examples, there's some pictures in the blog article that I just mentioned. This is not past the point of repair. This part in the cap might be, but the rest of this, if I add water to this and stir it. That's the other thing. Once your paint gets that thick, you need to stir it. You can't just shake it. So I get these things. It's like a party's best friend, apparently. And then I stir when I mix in the water, and then I shake it. So even with the vortex mixer, you still have to stir when they get to a certain level of goopiness. And I'm going to put that one aside so that I do repair it. But hopefully this is enough to see what the color looks like. Which one was next? Hearthfire. And maybe I'll try to scrape that off and fix it. Yes, the buzzy, shaky mixer things that Pendrake is mentioning is what a vortex mixer is. And there are a variety of ones. I actually bought an old, like, used to be in a lab one. I don't know, it could be full of radioactivity. But I have, like, hand and wrist problems. So to do the paint maintenance used to take me weeks. Even if I just wanted to do that, because I'd only be able to do so many in a day. And then my hands and wrists would start to hurt, and I'd have to take a break and get back to it. But now I'm trying to do the thing, I'm trying to take my paints down and add these swatch things, and then also do maintenance on them at the same time. So that's a nice, that's a really warm, it does make you think of a hearth. Nice warm color. I lost the lid of my peppermint white. Okay, which one is next? The turkey brown that we did already look at, but for completeness' sake, I will maybe put it there, or maybe I put it back somewhere weird. There we go. Now this color is a bit transparent, if I recall correctly. So you may not want to use it for base coats, but, well, that doesn't look too bad. But it's a really cool color. Well, cool as in nifty. It's brown, it's not a cool color. And this is why I recommend testing that you're using pens that are waterproof, because you are going to get water around. All right, what am I up to? Frosty Blue. I have found, I'm not totally surprised that it was the sparkling snow that had this problem. I have found that metallics dry out and get goopy faster than matte paints. And like across brands and lines and stuff like that. When I've had paint that died out of a set of paints, the metallic was much more likely to go first or need to be maintained earlier than the matte paints. And I assume that's because there are actual little additional particles in there. There are additional particles in matte paint, honestly, because that's what makes it matte. But those are smaller particles that I don't think cause as many problems. So this is the coal black that people were mentioning. It's got just a little bit of like a teal undertone that's really nice and interesting. So those are the holiday colors. And hopefully that will dry before the end of the stream, and I'll bring those back. But does anyone want to see the miniatures from the Kickstarter Learn to Paint kit again? So I don't know how many people we had sort of come in the middle. If you'd like me to kind of run through these again and talk about stuff, or what else I might do to entertain you. Because I know we're all Kickstarter fever now. Those are the ones. So weirdly, I don't have swatches of these. Well, do I kind of? No. I do have... Where are they? So when I was working on the Kickstarter paint kits, I did a lot of this. So I had 12 paint colors to work with. And I would test different mixes of those 12 colors to see what I would get and whether it would do what I wanted it to do. And that is something I recommend to you to do as well. So this was when I was choosing the colors. So I looked at several different reds from the Bones line, and then several different yellows and a couple of different blues, and did some initial mixes between those two, and then, you know, did some different mixes with the purples and things. Lady Nim asks, will there be a new holiday paint set? I don't know if we know for sure, but I would be surprised if there weren't at least a few colors. So I don't know if there'll be a full set of 10, but I would imagine there would probably be at least a blister or something. Sadie likes mixing new colors. I can't see that we wouldn't get new colors. So there's some of the different greens and different skin colors. This was me attempting to get I mentioned there wasn't like a rust brown, and that was one of the tough things not to, afterwards I was like, why didn't I give myself one of those? But with 12 colors, you can only have so many. This was more tested. Here I was testing which green went well with the colors. So I started by picking my primaries and then added kind of the adjunct colors. And then these were testing different mixes. So these are some of the colors on the Noble Lady. And some of them look quite different before I added the washes and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see when people mix these colors. When you first put the base coat down, the color looks a lot different from what it ends up looking like after you do the other steps. Oops, my finger in my paint. So I'm definitely going to clean that off before I look at the figures. And here, we'll do it on tan this time because that is also neutral. So if you got the Learn to Paint kit in Bones 5, there are 12 different paints, which I didn't pull those out, but there are also 12 different figures. So these are Bones Black figures. And so the kit starts with, it's a modified version of the Core Skills kit. So it covers primarily base coating, washing, and dry brushing. And I did a little extra step to add some color to this guy. So this is a Boulderkin. He was available, I think, as an add-on. I don't know, might have been in the core set. Honestly, like, the painters are the worst people for knowing this stuff because we often see them before or outside of how they get released. But one of them is included in the Learn to Paint kit, and he's kind of the one I use for the detailed instructions to teach someone how to do base coating, washing, and dry brushing, and then add the extra details. So if you know someone who's new to painting, and this is an excellent kind of figure to start with for something like that, because there's several large surfaces or just a little bit of detail, someone's going to be able to get in and paint this and be finished and feel a sense of accomplishment pretty quickly. And then we suck them into the torture later. That stuff comes later. And then, so this is a Bog Witch. So I gave her like glowy green eyes as well as the glowing staff to kind of make her look a little more supernatural. And she's got these, the way Bob sculpted these cloak folds is really great for dry brushing and washing. And then this is just a simple, like, you paint it white and then you use the bright green over it and it gives it a slight glow, and the eyes are the same method. So once these are out and I can get additional copies of these figures, so these I think are actually, I think there's like an official name for it, but I would call them sort of test prints. Reaper gets 2 or 3 of each figure. I think when they first, after the factory makes the mold, they send like test copies for Reaper to check over and make sure everything's okay. So these are actually those. I have not received any Kickstarter miniatures. These are the only ones I've seen, and they're Bones Black. So far as I know, there were no changes between these figures and the ones that are going to be in the fulfillment. But I have not jumped the queue in any way. I only had what I got because I needed to paint them, and those were like one of very few copies, so they couldn't send me extra ones. But I'm hoping that once some are available and they're done with fulfillment, that I can maybe do 1 or 2 of them on this show. So some Mondays I'll do the figures from the Bones Learn to Paint kit. This is a Catfolk Archer, sculpted by Julie Guthrie. It's got like kind of paving stones, or cobblestones, I guess, for the base. And I have an orange kitty, so I felt like I wanted to paint an orange kitty for this. Let's see, who else is next? This is, Ogana. I think his name's Ogana, Savannah Ranger, if I'm remembering correctly. And that gave me the opportunity to do like a nice warm red in a darker skin tone. And then this is a cooler red on Siobhan, I think is her name. She's like a vampire lady, actually, so she's very pale. And then this is based on, there's color art even for this, not just line art. And I tried to follow the color scheme from the color art, which was, it's like there's dark red and then less dark red. So it's a bit tough sometimes when it's that kind of color scheme, but hopefully people will enjoy that. I think this one is just called Huntress by Bobby Jackson. She's got these neat little fleur-de-lis decorations all throughout her outfit, so it's kind of a coordinated look. And this was the one where I was like, oh, I really wish I had a rusty brown. But I like the color that I came up with. People seem to like it. I do not remember his name or even his job title. But he's got a cleric fighter type vibe because he's got the book. And I believe this is Bobby Jackson. Those cloak folds are pretty good for dry brushing as well. And let's see, this is someone in chat kindly helped me. So I have two cats, Pendrake. So I have one that she's a gray tabby, but her tummy's white, and so she's got some black stripes and gray, and then the white tummy. And then my other cat, who he's not as much of a lap kitty, and he doesn't come and bug me when I'm streaming very often, so he has not made it onto stream. I think he's made it on a couple Reaper errands, but he's also very heavy. Like, he's lost some weight, but he was at 19 pounds. I think he's down to 17 pounds. So he's a lot to try to lift up, and then he'll flail around and try to knock stuff over. So yes, this is Tristan the Lore Mistress with her super cute dragon at Fire Lizard, for those of us who've read those books. And I painted the web store version of this. This was one of the anniversary miniatures, I think, a few years ago. Yeah, he's a lot of cat. Lord Dave was right. Corbin is a lot of cat. So I wanted to try to follow that color scheme, but in a bit more of an accessible paint style, because the way I painted the store one, there's a lot of fiddly parts. But I like that green kind of pinky red combo a lot. This is Gontar, the Orc Shaman. He's got some really nice texture on the cloak. Painted him as a bit of an older, wiser kind of orc. Although he's pretty ripped. I mean, he's got some serious leg muscles and abs and stuff, but so he still goes to the gym, even though he's a little older. And that one's a little... I tried to make it a range of how complex the figures were to paint. I mean, some of them are just complex in that they have a lot of detail. I tend to like a miniature like this one or this one. Probably the cat lady and this. These are going to be a little more accessible to people who are super brand new. You want more nice big surfaces and less tiny details for your first few times out, so that it's not too intimidating. And monsters and animal type figures are great too. That's why, one reason I picked this guy to be kind of the spokesmodel for the detailed explanation, because this is a very accessible miniature for someone who's never painted before to just pick up and slap some paint on. This is, I think she's just called Noblewoman. And I wanted to do some kind of pastels and more city or noble or rich person type colors, as well as the more adventuring type colors, because depending on the characters that you're painting or what you're painting them for, you're going to have townsfolk as well, probably. So this is one of the several versions of Terror the Silent. This may have been the first version. No, I think a Sandra Gary one was first. This is probably the second one. This is by Werner Glock. There's the Glock and Booty. I painted there's another version of this figure that has a flute, and I don't remember her name. So I painted that version, which is kind of the same, or similar from the waist down, but I'd never gotten to paint this one before, so that was fun. Well, I think I did the anniversary version of that one too, but totally different color scheme. This is Young Mage by Bobby Jackson, and Bobby Jackson actually picked the color scheme for this, and the color scheme that Bobby Jackson picked was Lawful Good, which in my world is not colors, but this is what I came up with, and I hadn't painted anything yellow at this point, and I thought it would be good to include that as a color option. It's not my favorite color to paint. Well, it's just not my favorite color. I mean, I just don't think about painting things yellow and orange very often. But it's good to stretch and do something a little different than what you normally do. You often learn things. So I was glad to do that. Hopefully Bobby Jackson likes them. I think that's all 12 of them. So those are, if you got that option in the Kickstarter, I have no idea if they're putting that in. There's no Minwax in Learn to Paint kit, so Bobby Jackson could not request that his figure be painted with Minwax because we are not supplying that to people. And I don't know whether or not the Learn to Paint kit is going to be included in the Bones 5.5 reopening of the Pledge Manager, which I will explain very briefly, but remember, I'm not a Reaper employee and I'm not on site, so I may get something wrong, and you should talk to an official Weeble person or go watch one of the previous videos, I think in the Q&A videos where they talked about this. There were almost 2,000 people who didn't fill out their Pledge Manager this year, which is way higher than the usual number that don't make it. So they're going to do a Bones 5.5 in essence for those people. So they'll be able to access the Pledge Manager at Kickstarter prices. And then if you didn't get in the Kickstarter, or you're someone who did fill out your Pledge Manager, you can also order more things, but you will be paying 20% more. So that was the post-Kickstarter price, I think, was 20% over what the Kickstarter price was. But I believe that also applies if you're someone who was a Kickstarter backer, but you got your pledge already. I think that also applies to you. So that's going to open up. It's not going to be everything. It's just going to be the more popular things so that they can meet their minimum order numbers for that. But that is the plan. I believe that's going to open before too long, even, actually. I don't remember the exact date, unfortunately. I feel like it was in July, though. Like, maybe I'm on crack, but I feel like it was in July. So let's look at the holiday colors again. They're not quite dry, but I think they're dry enough to get a better idea of the color. Richard J. Hodge says July 5th. So when you're not watching my show next week, because I'm not airing next week because it's the observation of the holiday, you can instead go and enjoy playing around and picking out some more miniatures in the 5.5 Kickstarter Pledge Manager. So there's the coal black. You can kind of just see the undertones of the blue and a little bit of green. And I am going to have to try that Hollyberry. That is a really nice red. I don't know why I haven't tried it. I kind of got to liking the reds in the Bones line, and unless I'm being super fussy, I just use those. I have no knowledge about whether boats are included in the 5.5. I don't know if that's been stated. If it's been stated, I didn't hear that. So I did watch the Q&A. I didn't hear what Justin said just before the show went live. There was a ticker for anyone who came in late, or you're looking for, Bones Kickstarter fulfillment information. Maybe someone in the chat could summarize, but Justin came on and gave an update. There's one container that they're still waiting for, and it included, there were more figures on it than they realized. So they had some figures that were retail packaging, not Kickstarter packaging, so they thought they had some stuff and they didn't. I think it's Dragon Folk, and I'm forgetting the other one now, but it's the Bust Collection, Campfire stuff. So there's 4 or 5 things that they're missing. If you had those things in your order, they're putting your order aside for right now, and as soon as those things come in, all the orders that were put aside, they start with those again. So they are still prioritizing you in the order of your pledge wave and stuff. You just have to wait for all the stuff that you wanted to be in stock. But they've started packaging and shipping. I mean, the UPS truck maybe probably already picked up the stuff they did today. I don't know. But yes, so Quindy in the chat has posted a clip, and I think Reaper John also posted it, of the update that Justin gave, which I didn't hear because I was doing all my prep stuff to get on the stream. So I'm going to go listen to it after as well. And then whenever they're not running a regularly scheduled show, I think they'll be running the feed of fulfillment. But I will just briefly go over the regular shows and then head out. So, well, I guess I'll leave the colors on the screen. So Monday to Friday, Anne paints starting at 11:30 a.m. and these are all Texas time of Central. Then my show runs from 2 to 4 on Mondays, other than Mondays that are holidays, and Anne won't be here next week either, I wouldn't think, because Reaper won't be here. Then Tuesday is the Crow's Nest at 5 p.m. So that's Michael Proctor and his co-host Jason Wiebe. So it's a painter and a sculptor, and then they often interview other painters or other sculptors or other industry people kind of behind the scenes at Reaper. And Michael will paint, and they'll talk about all kinds of things. It's one of the Artist Con that I was mentioning that they used to do is kind of a mini show. It's kind of like a stream version of Artist Con where you get to hear from some artists and we just sit around and talk about cool miniature stuff and we have fun. Sometimes Michael has previews as well. On Wednesdays is Miniatures Den with the Italian painter Luca. So if there's some interesting differences between the American and the European styles of approaching painting, and I recommend studying both. There's definitely something to be learned from both approaches. So that's a good way to check that out. On Thursday, we have the Crafty Creative with Josh Foreman, and he's kind of like, if you're into terrain and building stuff and general crafts and just being imaginative, you would love that show. Then at 6 p.m. is just the facts and previews type. If you just want to see miniatures and you just want to find out where your Kickstarter stuff is, Reaper Live is the show. I'm sure that after they get through fulfillment, then we'll start hearing a lot more about ReaperCon stuff. Fridays is Reaper Land at 3 p.m. And that's Reaper John, who's in chat, and also Dave, who's one of the co-owners of Reaper. And they do a lot of community-related things and just hang out and have fun. And every other Friday, so not this week, because we just did it last week, but then next week we will do Reaper Errant again, which is some of the painters and sculptors of Reaper sit down and play a Dungeons & Dragons game together on a Twitch stream. And we've done this live and in person for years when we get together at a con. So we play together normally just, 3 or 4 times a year, but this allows us to do it every other week, which is great. And it's hosted by Nightheart Gaming, which has their own channel. So if you watch and you love the terrain and the painted figures and everything, which is really, it's a mind-boggling setup. You can get more of that on Nightheart. And then Saturday is Painting Platinum with Sadie, who is the current person who designs and mixes the paint colors. So if you like paint stuff, and she actually started out with doing the Learn to Paint kits. And then, so if you want to go back and watch the old streams, because all of this, if you missed any of this and you want to go back in time to the beginning of our adventures on Reaper Errant, it's all archived on Reaper's YouTube channel. I noticed it hasn't been hitting the playlists as much. So it used to be that all the Reaper Errant stuff was in a playlist and not all of Anne's things were in a playlist, and that doesn't seem to be happening as much anymore. But you should be able to find stuff regardless. And so there's tons of a backlog of painting and role-playing and updates and fun stuff. So thank you all for tuning in. I know that some of you would much rather have seen people packing boxes than have watched this, but hopefully I wasn't too... I'm not throwing shade at Justin. I just happened to notice that things weren't getting put in playlists as much. Thank you, Astrogene. I'm glad that you enjoyed the swatches. And so not next week, but the week after, I will be back talking about. Justin just went right under the bus. Well, I have been on the Crow's Nest a few times, so I'm familiar with driving the bus. So I will be talking about shipping and transporting miniatures, and then I'll probably, in the coming weeks, I'll do another repaint on at least one miniature. I want to give people examples of feedback you might get at ReaperCon, before ReaperCon even, but it also applies to just general painting, or if you're in our online contests or other conventions or whatever. But we're going to raid now, so we're raiding Miniatures Den too, so you can go meet Luca right now. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great day.